The contemporary transformation of the Gaza Strip, from a vibrant Mediterranean economic hub to a landscape of systemic structural erasure, represents a phenomenon far more complex than the collateral effects of a conventional military campaign. It serves as the material evidence of what Dan Steinbock, 2025, characterizes as the fall of Israel, a systemic, multidimensional degradation of the state's moral, political, and economic frameworks. As these internal structures undergo a period of intense corrosion under a messianic autocratic shift, the Palestinian population is being subjected to a state of engineered asphyxiation, a process of systematic economic deprivation now exacerbated by the direct regional confrontation involving Iran and the strategic alignment of the U.S. Steinbock's analysis suggests that the Zionist project is experiencing a profound internal implosion. The transition from a secular democratic model towards a theocratic autocracy has precipitated significant capital flight and a notable brain drain within the Israeli high-tech sector. The current administrative focus on judicial restructuring and the acceleration of illegal settlement expansion has compromised regional stability. However, this domestic fragmentation has external consequences. To mitigate the effects of internal disintegration, the Israeli leadership has intensified its posture of external aggression. The direct confrontation with Iran in 2026 has transitioned a localized colonial occupation into a regional conflagration. The fiscal burden of this prolonged conflict, coupled with the mass mobilization of human resources, has rendered the Israeli economy vulnerable to a degree not observed since the late 1970s. While the occupying power manages this systemic decline, the Palestinian territories are experiencing a calculated process of institutional strangulation. According to the March 2026 economic update from the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute, MAS, the Palestinian Authority's 2026 emergency budget projects a deficit of ILS 11.9 billion, representing approximately 70% of total expenditures. This fiscal gap is not a consequence of autonomous market fluctuations. Rather, it is the direct result of the systematic withholding of clearance revenues by the Israeli administration, a mechanism of financial leverage designed to destabilize the Palestinian institutional framework. The escalation between Israel and Iran, supported by the continuous military provision from the U.S., has functioned as a catalyst for this economic contraction. The disruption of regional logistics and the volatility surrounding the Strait of Hormuz have driven energy prices beyond $120 per barrel. For an economy lacking energy sovereignty, such as Palestine's, these costs translate into an unsustainable burden on all productive sectors. The cost of food security has risen sharply, while domestic purchasing power has been significantly diminished. In the West Bank, the agricultural sector, identified by the MAS report as a critical buffer for survival, is facing a dual pressure: the intensification of settler-led land confiscation and the prohibitive costs of essential inputs such as water and fuel. A significant dimension of this 2026 reality is what Steinbock terms the militarization of foreign policy. The integration of advanced artificial intelligence into military operations has created what is described as mass assassination factories, where technological precision is utilized for large-scale structural destruction. By providing both the ordnance and the diplomatic latitude for Israel to engage regional rivals, Washington has ensured that the Palestinian crisis is often framed as a secondary concern within the broader context of a potential global conflict. This geopolitical distraction is being utilized to implement fundamental changes on the ground. Amidst the regional instability, there are now external proposals concerning the introduction of fragmented digital currencies within Gaza. Far from being a neutral financial innovation, such measures represent a strategy to disrupt the monetary cohesion of the Palestinian people and circumvent the Palestine Monetary Authority, PMA. These efforts aim to finalize the institutional and territorial separation of Gaza from the West Bank through an irreversible financial divorce. We are currently witnessing the Great Conjuncture, the intersection of long-standing ethnic displacement strategies and modern neoliberal failures. The rhetoric surrounding the redevelopment of Palestinian lands under the guise of regional security or commercial interest indicates a political class that has prioritized territorial acquisition over geopolitical stability. The data from the 2026 emergency budget serves as a definitive indicator of a system under extreme duress. Without the immediate restoration of clearance revenues and the cessation of domicide, the systematic destruction of the built environment, the Palestinian economic infrastructure faces total dissolution. Ultimately, as Steinbock observes, a political system predicated on the long-range disaster of occupation eventually finds that its internal stability is inextricably linked to the crisis it perpetuates. The regional escalation observed today is a symptom of a deeper refusal to acknowledge that regional stability is impossible while Palestinian economic and political rights remain unrecognized. Peace cannot be achieved through the ratification of documents while the structures of ultra-apartheid and financial strangulation remain active. The evidence provided by Steinbock and the MS reports indicates a deliberate attempt to undermine the viability of a nation by dismantling its means of subsistence. The international community must move beyond the narrative that views Palestinian deprivation as a necessary component of regional security. In reality, the degradation of the Israeli political state and the systematic asphyxiation of Palestine are two components of a single structural crisis, one that can only be resolved through the dismantling of the architecture of erasure and the recognition of Palestinian sovereignty as a fundamental requirement for regional equilibrium.